oh my gosh, no. You don't have to be grateful for something that isn't a fit for you anymore. But then, yes, the way they move on from that point determines whether they're able to get to that precipice of change and like actually able to enact the change that they want to. But if they allow themselves to stay stuck in that boredom and tell themselves like, no, it's fine. You should be grateful for everything that you've got. You know, you've got a steady paycheck, you've got all these things, like be happy with what you've got, then they can stay there and they can kind of languish in that state.
I feel like so often ambition is synonymous with change, because if we want to achieve something that we don't already have, we are likely going to need to make some kind of big life change to do it. And if that's the case for you, this episode is going to be incredibly valuable. I interviewed the amazing Meg Trucano Ph.D. Meg is a developmental psychologist and confidence coach who helps ambitious women to navigate major life and career changes. In Meg's own journey, after spending more than 15 years leading high-profile research for US government agencies, she experienced a burnout which made her question everything, and she realized that her external success didn't equal fulfillment inside. After going through her own journey, she now empowers women to reclaim their time, their energy, and their self-trust so that they can build the career and the life that really aligns with what they want. Meg is also a private client of mine, so it's been an absolute pleasure to interview her, to share her expertise, and also dive into some of the changes that she's seen in her life and business as a huge introvert working with an introvert-specific coach. Meg shares about big career changes and why they can feel terrifying, what to do about that. We talk a lot about flow, which is a really interesting concept when we think about curating our skills and pushing outside of our comfort zone and feeling challenged to do so. Meg has a really, really great way to look at that. We talk about the outdated work beliefs that are really keeping many of us stuck, how success is not one size fits all, and one that I know will resonate with so many of you is what to do when you don't have the perfect plan, how to really be able to lead yourself to take the next step without knowing the exact outcome, which can feel incredibly challenging. So whether you have ever made a huge change, whether you're considering one now, or whether in your big plans, you know that there is going to be a time when you need to step up and make massive changes, then this episode and Meg in general is going to be a wonderful resource for you. Meg, thank you so much for joining me on The Ambitious Introvert, of which you are a listener.
I'm an avid listener, and I never miss an episode. In fact, I asked you the other day, I'm like, when's the next episode coming out?
You did. You actually messaged me in Slack because you're a private client as well and said, "What is there no podcast today?"
I was like, part of my weekly routine.
It's so interesting. And I love that. And I think it's just a great reminder of how much when we are exposed to something and we're consuming it in a good way and we're taking it in, how much it does become a habit. Like I know when I listen to podcasts, it's very habitual. I listen to certain ones at the weekend. I used to listen to a lot when I was driving. I'm getting a car again in a few weeks, so maybe I'll start listening to them again. I know. But it was such a good reminder where you were like, where's your podcast? Is it not out today?
Yeah, I always do my workouts with you. I don't like music. I like listening to The Ambitious Introvert when I work out.
I love it. And I did an episode with another client, Dr. Claire Wilde, who you know Claire also. Mm-hmm. Claire actually found me through the podcast many years ago. She's been a client for a long time, but she found she typed introvert podcast or something into Apple or Spotify. Yeah. And mine came up and she went, oh, I'll give it a listen. And then she joined a program that I ran many years ago. And now she's a private client. And when she was a guest on here, she was a bit like, this is so surreal that I've been listening to this for so many years. And I found you this way and now you're interviewing me.
Yes, I know. I have the same mind bend because I met you via another program that we were both in. You were teaching in a teaching capacity, coaching, and I was taking it. And I remember that was one of the podcast resources. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. amazing. I love your energy and it's just awesome.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here. And now we're going to make an amazing episode that you can listen to while you're working out. Oh my gosh. Okay. So much that we can talk about here. First off, obviously I've introduced you at the start of the episode, but tell the listeners a little bit about your own story of making a huge change in your life.
Yeah. So it's fairly similar to most other, career breakdown stories, but after getting my PhD in psychology, I moved to Washington, D.C. in the States and got a job in education research. And it was all around like evaluating federal policy and programs and things like that. So I worked my way up in that field and I didn't ever love it. I was good at it. I was extremely good at it. And I had been kind of on that hamster wheel of achievement and ambition. And, you get to one thing and you're like, oh, this is, I got to get to the next level and get a PI, get a first authorship on this paper, all these kinds of things that you feel like actually matter, but kind of actually really don't. But at one point it was around COVID, I realized that my energy was just tanking. I had the Sunday scaries. I would just get this pit in my stomach when I would have to go back to work the next day. Mind you, I loved the people that I was working with. It was the actual work. And so I just kind of gaslit myself for several years about, oh, no, everything's fine. It's fine. Then I would get to a point where I would hit kind of a rock bottom and I'd be like, I'm done. I'm done with this. And then something good would happen and I would be like, oh, it's not so bad. Or maybe I'll be okay. Periods of this just over time. And then I started working with a coach and she asked me a question during one of our sessions. And that question was, how will you feel in 1 year when you are in the exact same position you are now? Because you've not done anything. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So we said goodbye and I just had a breakdown. Like I was sobbing and my husband came home. He's like, what happened? And I told him, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And he's like, well, yeah, of course you can't do this anymore. Like I've known that for a while. You've known that for a while, but now you're just acknowledging to yourself that you can't do this anymore. So I made an exit plan. I think it was like 5 or 6 months exit plan for me to save up enough money to be able to kind of take a little bit of a break and then go into full-time coaching practice. And it was, when I told my team, they were completely devastated, but I think they were also a little proud of me too, that I was doing something that they knew really lit me up. So yeah, I exited the corporate world.
I love that they were proud of you.
Yeah, they were proud of me. And I think somewhat inspired them to kind of do things a little differently and think about things a little differently. And I got many comments after that about like, you're so brave. You were so brave to do that. And I never felt brave a second through that entire process. But retrospectively, yeah, I mean, bravery is all about doing things that terrify you and just keeping going. It's you still feel fear. You just keep going.
It's so funny you said that because I was literally going to say, I remember when I was leaving my job and a friend of mine said to me, you're so brave. And I thought that was a very odd turn of phrase. I was like, I'm not like going to a war zone or, running into burning buildings or anything like that. I'm just leaving a job and starting a business. But yeah, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that is quite brave.
Yeah. And I think there is also an element of like this rebelliousness or this like defiance of the expected thing, right? Like I'm sure they expected you to stay in this very lucrative position as an air traffic controller for life, right?
Until I was 57 and I could draw my pension.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so going against that very obvious plan seems brave to people who haven't yet learned that questioning the status quo and questioning social norms and conditioning around certain ways we define success, it's tough to have that shift.
So let's go back to your lived experience in that moment, because you just said something really interesting. And I think, you and I have talked about this before for your work with clients, but you didn't feel brave. You felt terrified every minute, but you did it anyway. I think there is a misconception when people see other people doing something and they go, oh, it's easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay because they make it look easy, or because you don't know what's going on inside their head or what internal chatter they're having with themselves. You just see the action. So you think, oh, well, it's okay for them because it's really easy, but I can't do that because I feel scared.
Yeah.
When in fact, everyone feels scared.
Yeah. And I find my clients often assume these other people who are doing big things or interesting things or things that they want to do is, oh, they're smarter than me, or they have a different degree than I do, or they just assume they have some sort of quality or qualification that makes it somehow easier for them. And that is almost never the case. It is literally just a turning inward and like I want to do this thing. It's going to be hard. It's going to be scary, but I'm going to do it because I care about it, because I want to do it. And you got one life. I feel like really absorbing that information and knowing that guides your actions in a much different way. But yeah, people all the time assume that other people have things that they don't have, experience and connections and money and all the things. And it's very, very often untrue.
I worked with a coach very early in my business who, we're giving coaching a really great shine here, who said something gut punching to me as well. She said, who are you waiting for permission from?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it was a good one. She's a good coach. And that's the whole point, right? Like you say, these people think that another certification or something else, or there'll be a right time, or that these other people have got this secret special quality that they don't have. And actually, those people have just made a decision.
Made the decision
to go all in.
Yes. And a lot of times people get hung up on this idea of, oh, there is a right way to do this, or there is a right next thing for me to do. And really, there are many, many different paths that have, similar outcomes in your life if you were to take them, right? And the focus on having there be like a single right way to proceed that you've over researched and you've done all of the like calculations. And, I work with a lot of very ambitious, high achieving, like very kind of like cerebral default people, right? And they like to have everything planned out, and they have been taught that there is a right answer. There is a correct thing. And there isn't. There just isn't. There's the next best thing for you for right now. And once you get there, you do the thing, you collect data, you look at it. Does this feel better than before? Cool. Does this feel worse than before? Then use that data that you've collected and modify, recalibrate as you need.
Something I know that you are very passionate about in your messaging and with your clients is that many people talk about making a big change, and it's like, leave the job and start the business, which was our big change, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But actually, the big change can go the other way. The big change can be like Jordan Shonda King in, actually, I'm going to sell this multi-six-figure business and be a stay-at-home mum.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to leave this very high-achieving job to travel the world or be an artist. So I think we can see the changes and moving on to something bigger and better. But it's not really about that. It's about fulfillment and energy.
Yes, and alignment with what you actually love. And so many people have lost touch with that or have lost respect for that. So I have a very good friend who had always had a dream that she was going to hike the AT, the Appalachian Trail in the United States. It's like a very, very, it's like 4,000 miles or something from Georgia to Maine. Like it's a thing. Like you have to take a year off of work, basically.
Really?
Yeah. The actual trail didn't take them all that long. I think they set out maybe in like early February in Georgia, hiked up to Maine, and they were done in the fall sometime. But like, it's a chunk of time and you have to plan for it. And like, totally unheard of in our kind of work circles, right? Is this alignment with what she really, really wanted, was to do this thing. She loves the outdoors. She's so into it. And like, she just was going to make it happen. Right. And when people plug into what they're authentically into, what their interests are, you get that energy and you get that kind of, yes, this is aligned. There are other people that, don't know what their interests are. And that's a whole other, kettle of fish. But then you have people who know what they're interested in and they ignore it, or they choose to do something else because they think it's going to be more lucrative or more, respected by society or whatever it is. So yeah, it is definitely an energetic difference too between those groups of people.
I know for me, I used to laugh because my hobby was starting my business because I love to learn. As you know, I'm a 1-3. My learner's pretty high in Clifton strengths. So is my input. So is my intellection. So I would take a course about coaching or marketing or something to do with building business. And that lit me up because I was learning something new and it was great. I got to a stage where the business was set up and running. I was like, I don't have a hobby anymore. My hobby is now my job. Yep. And I need something to fill the gap of what was the hobby, because I don't love learning about marketing anymore. That's just part of my day to day.
Yeah. First of all, same. There's, you do those exercises sometimes. Like if you had all the money in the world, what would you spend your money on? And I'm like, courses,
books.
More course books. So I totally understand that. But yeah, there is a myth out there, and we were talking about this before we hit record, is like, there is a huge myth circulating that, if you follow your desires and you follow your interests, that you automatically have to make that into your business and what you do for money. But there is a very critical place for hobbies. And I actually hate the word hobbies because it makes it sound trivial and like not important. And I think it's crucial in terms of our overall well-being as human beings. Just absolutely necessary. And it's a creative outlet. So I wish there was a better word than hobby. But
have you read, I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be yes to this, given that I know you're an avid reader and a psychologist, Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Oh yeah, I did my graduate dissertation all over that.
So I think that's the point, rather than like hobby, which can sound quite trivial. It's any activity that gets you into this state of flow.
Yes. And if we go back to Csikszentmihalyi's original definition of flow, it's actually at a critical inflection point between having the skills to do something and being challenged. And there's this like very fine balance there. You have to be a little bit more challenged than you feel like you have the skills to meet. And so that is that tiny little space in between those two things. That's flow.
I love that, because I put an email out last week about the podcast saying, I was sharing like 5 lessons that I've learned from doing this podcast for 5 years. And one of the things I said in that, and a ton of people responded actually, which is unusual for my emails, is that I started off interviewing friends and peers, and then I interviewed, some of my mentors, and then I would reach out to people that I kind of liked in the online space, and then I reached out to people I really admired, and then I'm reaching out to people like Gay Hendricks, who are like heroes. And for this to stay, I had a really good question on Diary of a CEO actually with Stephen Bartlett. He said someone asked him like, what do you need to do and ensure is in place so you can keep doing this for like 30 years? And for him, he said it was the quality of the guest. It wasn't about, does the guest have a big audience? He's going to sit there and have a 2-hour conversation with someone, week in, week out. He needs to love the conversation. And I think that inflection point that you say, I've seen that with the podcast. Not that my friends were boring, they're not boring in any way, shape or form, but my I guess my own skill set has evolved as a podcaster, and I want to be challenged. I want to interview people who are talking about things I don't know about or are going to challenge the way I think and my perspective. So this is, I would record the podcast day in, day out. I love doing this. It's my second favorite part of my business after talking to clients, which is essentially a podcast, as you know, because we just voice note on Slack all the time. But that's really interesting because I can see how I could get bored if I wasn't being slightly challenged all the time.
Yeah, so important. And that's actually what I wrote my dissertation on, by the way, was boredom and how flow. So my whole dissertation and the research on boredom and affective states has exploded since I won't date myself, but like since I went through grad school, but I conceptualized it as a spectrum of like boredom on one end where you're potentially challenged, but you don't feel like you have the skills. And so you disengage. And then on the other end, you have flow where you're pretty challenged, but you're like, nah, I got this. And so what I did was I gave middle schoolers, they're just like at this beautiful point between childhood and adolescence. Like, they're lovely. But I gave them a really hard math task to do that I knew was not in their skill set yet, right? They hadn't gotten to it in school, whatever. And then I had them kind of measure their emotional states throughout. And when it became too hard for them, they would disengage. But also they got disengaged when it was too easy for them. So there was this like very kind of narrow band of challenge to skill set that, teachers have to navigate that. That's a tough thing to do for each individual student. So anyway, it's just a really fascinating concept of this mental state, right? That can drive so much of our personal growth and so much of our lived experience, right? Is this relationship that we have between the things that we have developed in ourselves, our skills and our competence, and challenge, something that challenges you. But if you're challenged and you don't have any skills in the area, you don't believe that you have any skills in the area, you react totally differently. It's not the same at all. So yeah, very interesting.
And from the point of view of your clients, how much do they feel that kind of understimulation, let's say, that boredom that pushes them to be like, I need to make a change. I need to do something. Is that what they recognize in themselves? This like, oh, I'm kind of settling and I'm not being, I don't know, fulfilled or nourished is the right word. And challenged.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think there's like, there's stages. It's kind of like, I don't want to compare it to the stages of grief, but like there are stages that people go through of like, oh, this doesn't feel like a good fit. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm so bored, but like, it's a stable job. I have a steady paycheck. I should be grateful for this. Oh my gosh, no, you don't have to be grateful for something that isn't a fit for you anymore. But then yes, the way they move on from that point determines whether they're able to get to that precipice of change and like actually able to enact the change that they want to. But if they allow themselves to stay stuck in that boredom and tell themselves like, no, it's fine. You should be grateful for everything that you've got. You've got a steady paycheck. You've got all these things, like be happy with what you've got. Then they can stay there and they can kind of languish in that state. And there are some people that know they hate their job or they hate their relationship or whatever it is, whatever kind of change. And they have acknowledged that they are not going to do anything about it. They're like, I'm not starting over. I'm not going to disrupt my entire life. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to me. I would rather be bored and stagnant and over here just kind of getting by than take the chance on something being way better after a change.
I've been doing some research for a secret project.
Ooh.
And that I haven't mentioned to anyone yet. But one of the things that I was reading just the other day was this idea that in the 50s and 60s, the pervasive narrative was, if you have a job, it's a job for life.
Yep.
You're going to join this company, and unless you do something pretty awful, you'll be there for life. And you will be grateful for that, because we've just been through 2 big world wars in the last 50 years and all of these economic crashes. And so if you're in, say, the UK or the US in the 60s and you graduate and you get this job for life. My mum used to say, oh, it's a job for life. It's a job for life. And of course, that narrative is what people our age, what our parents grew up with.
Yep.
So many people, I'm going to say, in like late millennials, early Gen Xers like me, late Gen Xers, early millennials, have that struggle because you want to do something different, but you're like, oh, but I should be grateful, like you say, because that's been passed down from parents.
Yes, but also regarding that mentality of the 50s and the 60s, people also had like social structures to support them, right? That weren't related to their jobs. They went to church. They had bridge club. They had like social networks that could support them for their kind of like social development. And then they had other like hobbies, again, I hate that word, but like they had hobbies and they had a rich home life and they enjoyed their weekends, et cetera. And then somewhere along the line, we got into the current quagmire, which is like work should be absolutely everything for you. And so, yeah, straddling that line between be grateful for the fact that you have a lifetime job and you'll, get a pension and whatever, to what it is now, which is like your work is your family and like, that kind of thing. So yes, that is the narrative that I grew up with, certainly, is like, be grateful that you have a job. And if you don't like it, suck it up. And, to the extent that you feel uncomfortable with that, that's your problem. And you need to deal with that emotionally, because you have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, it's so true. And I just find it fascinating that that narrative is still so strong now. And of course, like you just touched on, the 80s kind of Gordon Gekko narrative of you should be married to your work. And
yes,
they're kind of the person that comes in first and leaves last is the most successful, is, still hanging around kind of 30 years later.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that keeps coming up in my work with clients too, is this idea of work as worth. And that is such a hard one to crack, because those messages are still very, very rooted in our popular understanding of work's place within a human's life.
So I have a wonderful client who is also a coach, and discussions that we've had many times are about her guilt for charging for a coaching package over X number of months rather than charging by the hour, because in her entire working life, it has been hourly. And that was a huge shift for her to see someone's paying me for my expertise. They're paying me because I have X number of decades experience in this field and I have a coaching certification, and they care less actually about how much time we spend together. If they could get the same answers and transformation and results in a 30-minute session as a 60, they would probably prefer that, because they're not sat looking at the clock going, well, I've paid you for an hour, so we're going to sit here for an hour. And I know that for her has been a huge shift, rather than I'm defined by how many hours I work, is, the value is in the outcome and the transformation.
You and I have had this same conversation also. And like the value of transformation as being the thing is in coaching. But yeah, the charging by the hour, and I came from federal contracting. You had to literally charge minutes to projects, right? To kind of track your time. And that's how the money would get allocated is time. And so, yeah, breaking free from that mindset of amount of time that you work on something. Even to this day, I am still working on this, cracking through this mindset. I'm an early riser, and I will work through till about noon, and then my energy tanks. I'm kind of done thinking heavily for the day. Client calls are different because you have an interaction and that gives me energy, right? Kind of like you. I think we're the same in that way. But yeah, I get more high quality work done in the morning between the hours of 7:30 and 10:30 than I would in a whole work day trying to squash it all, squash it all in and whatnot. So yeah, it's a hard one to break.
And we've talked about that in your coaching,
Yes,
about the guilt of, should I be doing a full day? And actually I was like, so what's the problem with this if you're getting everything done? But it's that conditioning of, oh, it should be 9 to 5. It should be this. And it's very interesting because my clients that are entrepreneurs quite often fall into a 9 to 5 mindset. They'll say they start their business for the freedom and to be able to work whenever they like. And then they find themselves falling into what they did before, or feeling like they quote unquote should do what they did before.
Yes. And I fell into that trap too. And until working with you, that's how I did it. And that's why I think that was kind of one of the reasons that led me to work with you, is because I just didn't feel like my business was giving me the energy that I knew I had a zone of genius. I knew I loved working with my clients, but the business part of it, creating the business, sucked my energy. But it was because I was engaging with it in the wrong way. I was not respecting my own natural energetic cycles, because it takes so much effort to break through those socially conditioned narratives and patterns that we've had since we were small.
When you described the type of people that you work with earlier, and you said they're really highly ambitious, but they're very cerebral, they're in their head. I thought, this sounds like Meg about 6 months ago. And like you just touched on, where you had become very cognitive about the business and the strategy and lost that connection with what do I actually enjoy here? What do I want to do? What's the not bigger purpose of this? But it's quite easy to slip into the weeds and be very much like marketing, strategy, sales. And yet those things are important and they needed. But you were doing so much as well. You were, running Instagram as well and doing all these other things. And we stripped so much back, and almost instantly you started getting people apply to work with you.
Yeah, it was insane. And it was all around expectations of what I thought I had to do. I love coaching. I love coaching clients. I love getting to, I don't even want to say help them, but like show them that they are the powerful beings that can do this big thing. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to have more people to do that with. And so to do that, you have to market. And to do that, you have to sell. And I thought I had to do Instagram. I thought I had to do TikTok. I thought I had to do, a funnel, which, yeah, that's great. But also I could be a great coach and have incredible clients without doing any of that. And so I think your tack was like, let's strip it back to what feels manageable, but also lights you up. And for me, that was LinkedIn, and really kind of focusing on LinkedIn. I will cross post to Instagram every now and again, but my focus is LinkedIn, because that's where, firstly, my people are, but also it's where I feel like there's an actual exchange of ideas rather than like commodification. So it's worked a charm. It's been amazing. The business is so much simpler, and I know with precision what I'm doing with every piece of content that I generate. And I'm so grateful for that.
You started a podcast.
I started a podcast.
Which I think we talked about in the first month or so of working together. And that was always going to be a wonderful avenue for you because of your energy and because you're so articulate. And you got it up in kind of breakneck speed. And it's been out for, as we're recording this, out for what, just over a month. Mm-hmm. And people are loving it. I love it. And I was a guest on it, which is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, you were my first guest.
Yeah. But something that's been really interesting for that I just want to share for other introverts is there was a hesitation where you were like, oh my God, I'm going to be exhausted from recording or meeting these people or having, these coffee connections to scope out potential guests. And as I highlighted to you, every time you come onto Slack and you go, I just met so-and-so and she was amazing. I'm like so fired up. There's this belief as introverts that we've got to be almost isolating ourselves and that people are going to drain us. And as I said to you, no, the right people don't drain us. The right people give us energy.
Yes. And I can't believe how true that is. And I remember having that conversation with you. I'm like, oh, I have 2 recordings in the same day. Like, am I going to need to, like, I don't know if I can handle this and whatever. And it's like, I have so much energy after that first one that I'm just like a lit flame through the second one. But again, the right guest, right? The right person with the right kind of energy, but also kind of breaking through that story that I'm telling myself that I'm not able to handle these like high energy tasks. You just have to do it with the right people.
Yeah. And I think that is so huge. It's so huge. And it's something that isn't probably talked about enough in the introvert space. And so people withdraw, or they feel like, oh, I really need to limit my interaction with people. I have another client and she'll message me and she'll say, oh, I did all this stuff at the weekend, but I feel great. I'm like, yeah, because sounds like you're doing stuff that you loved with people you really like spending time with. So yeah, of course we need time alone. I know you're very good with that in your mornings, with having your spaciousness, and obviously you've got small kids and all of that, but we can go too far the other way. I think some introverts go too far in, oh, I'm avoiding people because they exhaust me, and they miss out on that nourishing kind of deep connection.
Oh my gosh, completely agree. And that I think is why I originally, like for my entire life, I thought I was an extrovert, because when I would get in like a meeting or something where I was really engaged, I would be on fire, right? Like I would have this, and it was only, honestly, it was after I started listening to your podcast that I realized that I was an introvert. And then I kind of started to reframe my understanding of regenerating energy. And it's not about how you show up. It's not about having, being unable to speak up in a meeting. Like that's not it at all. It's about how you recharge your energy. And for me, yep, that is my non-negotiable pre-children morning time. But it's also these amazing conversations that I get to have with people about shit that I love to talk about. Like I love having conversations with people who know their shit, who can offer value to people who are going through something. And I think that's everything to me. I love it.
Oh, I love that. I think that's a perfect place to wrap up. Obviously, everyone go and check out Dr. Meg, check out the Changeology podcast, because it is amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on The Ambitious Introvert. How did it feel to be on this end of the show rather than listening?
You know what? I was really nervous, but you're a fantastic interviewer. So it was awesome. I loved it.
I love it. Right, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you one question to give value to the listeners. Share with them, please, as a busy mum, as a busy business owner, as someone who, by your own admission, can get into your own head. What is one non-negotiable practice that really helps you to stay grounded and really own your energy?
I'm going to totally cheat and give two. One is having a coach, having someone who can hold space for me when I have my, oh shit, I'm spiraling in my cognitive space, but also that morning routine. And for me, that just looks like getting up before anybody in the household is up, going down in the pitch black and lighting some candles, having my coffee. And sometimes I journal, sometimes I just stare off into space, but it's a good 30 to 45 minutes before my kids get up and go to school. That is just for me. So that's mine.
What time do you get up?
5:30-ish.
Do you wake naturally, or do you set an alarm?
I set an alarm. And honestly, since this most recent time change, it's been very rough.
Oh yeah, because you're already on daylight savings.
Yeah,
we're not quite there yet. I'm asking that because I think the early morning thing is very interesting, because some people see it as a chore, like, oh no, I've got to get up early. Whenever you talk about it, it feels very luxurious. It feels like I go down the stairs and it's pitch black and I light a candle and it's silent. And I'm sold on it. I'm an early riser anyway. But just for anyone listening who's thinking, oh, I really need my sleep, I do not want to get up any earlier. But you credit that to helping your energy throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the days that I don't do that are the days that I'm like discombobulated and I don't get as much done. But I think also, I know you have said in the past that, morning routines are awesome if they work for you, but there's also a lot of emphasis in popular culture on like, what's your morning routine? And it's like your 10-step skincare routine. And that's great if that's what speaks to you. But like, for me, it's the quiet and the silence of not having to attend to anybody else's needs. As a mom of twin toddlers, like that is the rest of my day, right? So
I love it. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me so much.
You're so welcome. I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes so everyone can come and connect with you. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling expanded to what's possible for you, motivated to take action, and inspired about how you can start to own your energy. I share even more tools and resources on my Introverts Only email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the Ambitious Introvert products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of introvert-friendly inspiration. Sign up now at theambitiousintrovert.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes. See you next week.